Summary of the French Revolution by Utica History 1942. The French Revolution was a period of intense social and political anger that was driven by many factors. It happened near the end of the 18th century, between the years of 1787 and 1799, reaching its climax in 1789. It led to an overthrowing of a monarchy and created new ideals and values, not yet widely seen in Europe and the world. It changed the world forever. Here I will summarize it from how it started and why, and the climax of it, and the effect it had on the world and the outcome of the French Revolution. How and why did the French Revolution begin? The French Revolution began in 1789 due to a blend of economic hardship, social inequality, and political discontent, which led to the people revolting against the regime. The majority of the population, who were peasantry and lower classes, were very much unhappy with the king, nobles, and the unjust system that ruled over them. Also, the spread of Enlightenment made people question the so-called divine rule of the French kings. Finally, the weak leadership of the reigning French king Louis XVI, as he was unable to address the financial crisis, led to the direct spark and cause of the revolution. When did the French Revolution begin, and when was the start of the revolution? The French Revolution began in 1789 as King Louis XVI needed more money, but he couldn't raise taxes, so he called the meeting the Estates General. The Estates General was a meeting between the three estates in French society: the nobility, the clergy, meaning the church, and the commoners. But instead of this meeting being successful, a Parisian mob that were hungry and enraged at the conditions of their lives and fed up with the king and government stormed the Bastille fortress, which was a prison. The storming of the Bastille did accomplish some things, like giving the revolutionaries guns and ammo, but most importantly, it was extremely symbolic, because it was an attack on the royal tyrannical government. It showed that the populace could force change of their own. The storming of the Bastille marked the symbolic beginning of the revolution, along with the switch to violent revolt, and led to a shift in political power when the National Assembly abolished feudalism and declared the rights of man and citizen. The Middle and the Moderate Period. The period after the storming of the Bastille resulted in King Louis XVI being forced to move to Paris with his family. This time saw a period of intense struggle for political control between the National Assembly and the king. The king was eventually forced to accept the power and the new authority of the new National Assembly government, basically losing his so-called divine soul grip on power of France. This phase from 1789 to 1792 was called the Moderate Phase. The 1789 Declaration of Man and Citizen was declared in this period, which is very important. It declared the rights of men and citizens. It initially didn't include women, until a separate rights for women came out in 1791. The Declaration of Man and Citizen laid out clear rights such as all men are born and shall remain free and equal in their rights. In this short time frame, a constitutional monarchy which intensely limited the French king's power was adopted. But during this time, King Louis XVI and his family tried to flee France, but were caught by the public. This really made the public lose all trust in the king and the old monarchy, and made the king and the royals seem like traitors. The short-lived constitutional monarchy resulted in France being in war such as the First Coalition against Prussia and Austria. The French military in 1792, with their mixed royalist and revolutionary volunteer army, had crushing defeats against Austrian and Hessian troops due to a lack of leadership and disorganization in their army in the Flanders campaign. Shortly after these military losses, which angered the public and their already lack of trust in the French monarchy, the French monarchy was officially overthrown on August 10, 1792. The monarchy was overthrown violently with the storming of the Tuileries Palace by Parisian revolutionaries. This led to the massacre of the king's Swiss guard and the imprisonment of Louis XVI. The monarchy was officially abolished, and France soon after this was declared a republic, and the new government was the National Convention. On September 21st, 1792 it was declared. This act marked the end of the Moderate Phase from 1789 to 1792, and the beginning of the radical part and the climax of the French Revolution. climax in the Reign of Terror. After the imprisonment of the king, radicalization took place in the revolutionary movement in France. The country was now governed by the First National Convention, then the Directory took power in 1795 in France, after the National Convention crafted a new constitution. The War of the First Coalition was still going on, and revolutionary France had just been born and had to fight many powerful nations, such as Prussia and Austria. But the new Republic government issued military reforms, and the armies achieved military victories in this very early period. This time period also began the Reign of Terror, which was a period of mass executions and intense violence, driven by the radical revolutionary wing, the Jacobins. Thousands upon thousands of so-called enemies of the revolution were arrested, and most of them were executed famously by guillotine. During this period is when France had internal counter-revolutions from around the country in different regions, which were put down, but sometimes it took years and years. France was also at constant war during this period of 1793 to 1798, and the climax of the revolution was 1793 to mid-1794. Then the most important event that changed French history and European history and world history forever. The King Louis XVI was put on trial for high treason and found guilty by the National Convention, and he was sentenced to death by guillotine. After execution of the king and many other so-called traitors, many major European powers such as Great Britain, Spain, and the Netherlands also declared war on revolutionary France, but joined Austria and Prussia, who was already fighting the French Revolutionary Republic. Revolutionary France was also expanding its territory in the War of the First Coalition, along with Napoleon's campaigns in northern Italy. The war in the Vendée and other internal conflicts were raging inside France, as royalists and counter-revolutionaries continued to fight against the newborn republic. Months later, the king's wife, Marie Antoinette, was also executed. It's estimated around 16,000 people executed during the Reign of Terror, but the years following the king's execution and the early years of the Republic were marked by political instability and constant warfare, both internal and external. The public eventually got fed up with the constant death and the Reign of Terror done by a man named Maximilien Robespierre, so a coup d'etat happened on July 24, 1794, which ended the radical Jacobins' control and ended the Reign of Terror, along with executing Maximilien Robespierre. The radical Jacobins' policies were ended, such as their policies of dechristianization and economic controls. Their anger towards the Jacobins was expressed through attacks and murders towards them by the French public. This led to the establishment of a new government, being the Directory, which governed revolutionary France from November 1795 until November 1799. This government was more moderate, but still conservative. They also struggled with political instability and economic problems. There were more uprisings in France, such as the Prairial and the Vendémiaire uprising, which was crushed by Napoleon Bonaparte, therefore increasing its prestige and reputation across France. The Directory government was corrupt and used the military to put down civil unrest, making it less popular with the people, which led to the eventual seizing of power by Napoleon Bonaparte, who was seen as a talented military officer who protected France against royalist and counter-revolutionary uprisings. The Directory feared Napoleon's influence and prestige, so they sent him to go lead an army into Mamluk Egypt. When Napoleon got stranded there, the early French Revolutionary Army under the Directory also started to do poor military-wise. End of the French Revolution. After Napoleon returned from his failed Egyptian campaign to France, he organized a coup d'etat to dispose of the weak Directory government and for him to seize power. He had the help of plenty of political allies and military allies, and also the support of the people, as he was seen as a hero. This was called the Coup of 18 Brumaire, which led Napoleon to declaring himself as the consulate, with himself as first consul and the official head of the French government. Following Napoleon's seizure of power and rise to leader of France, this is generally considered the end of the French Revolutionary period, from 1789 to 1799, and the beginning of the Napoleonic period, from 1799 until 1815. Napoleon installed various reforms and eventually declared himself with dictatorial powers, and in 1804 crowned himself Emperor of France, which switched France from a revolutionary republic to an authoritarian empire. But the French people had immense support and respect for Napoleon Bonaparte. The next era after the French Revolution is the Napoleonic era, which is marked by constant warfare and the plenty of European coalitions sent to defeat France. And this is when the French Empire was at its zenith of power. The consequences and impact of the French Revolution. The consequences and impact of the French Revolution changed France, Europe, and the entire world and the fabric of history forever, and many effects of it can still be seen today, such as the separation of church and state, The political terms left and right, and traditions of public education and centralized government, along with individualized rights, all gained practice and inspiration from the French Revolution. The French Revolution also led to the new ideas of democracy and nationalism that spread to places outside of France, such as Ireland and Poland, and beyond. The aftermath of the French Revolution also led to France's most powerful era under Napoleon Bonaparte, which saw the constant warfare in Europe called the Napoleonic Wars, where France experienced its most military strength and success, and led to France dominating continental Europe through their Grande Armée and the leadership of Napoleon Bonaparte and other French commanders. The French Revolution also led to intense geopolitical shifts, which spread their values and redrew borders in Europe and beyond. In summary, the French Revolution changed the world and history forever through new values and movements that still affect the world and inspire movements for democracy and justice across the world today. Thanks for watching Wutka History 1942.